Peace through strength. Want to define it for us?
Well, peace through strength is usually defined as a country being usually militarily strong enough that other countries don't want to mess with it. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a time of peace because no one wants to dare mess with each other, or one is so powerful and seeks peace that no one wants to mess with it.
Mm-hmm. I think Trump using this strategy is a very good method. I think it, especially for the way the world is right now. But I think a lot of people don't understand the historical context of it's not something Trump made up. It's something that was used many times in the past and was very successful.
Yeah. And a lot of his critics right now are kind of accusing it for being warmongering. Which, when you look at Trump's previous administration, he didn't start any wars. And he's the only president that has. Did Obama start any wars?
I think so, because from what I've heard, he's the only one in the modern era that hasn't had.
I'm just second guessing it and going, where did Obama start?
We'll look that up post.
Okay. Yeah, Bush had obviously the Iraq wars. Obama had, I don't know what. Everything happened in the Middle East with Biden. Well, there's wars that started, like Obama had the Crimean incident, and then there's civil war in Syria. Obama shot up Lebanon a bunch. That started a civil war. So they mean no war started under the administration because they kind of flex their muscle everywhere to keep things stable. I mean, Obama weren't like putting foot soldiers on the ground for these conflicts.
Mm-hmm. Basically, other things had started, but nothing formal under Barack as well. But I don't think his policy of this was too different, at least in this context.
Well, I mean, he didn't really flex much good muscle against the Syrians when they're gassing their own people.
Well, obviously,
he put a red line saying, "Hey, you don't do this. Don't gas your own people, or bad consequences will happen." And Assad gassed his people, and we fired a couple missiles at him, but didn't really do anything. Assad just kept doing it anyway afterwards. And
well, I think that's another reason Biden had such a fail of a foreign policy, because they knew he was say the second Obama, but weaker.
Yeah, he didn't do anything when pretty much. Well, yeah, because the Crimea happened during Obama with Russia. The Russians went into Ukraine, took over the little island, bottom of Ukraine, Crimea. And it sounded like Obama made a deal with Russia to do that. Remember him telling Putin, "Please help me win this election, and I'll give you more flexibility." Flexibility to do what? Take over Ukraine?
I guess so.
More or less what happened. We didn't say nothing to Obama or to Putin when he took Crimea. It was almost like a under-the-table deal.
Yeah.
Well, and that led to this. A giant war between Ukraine and Russia, because Russia did not fear any response from the West.
I can't say it was wrong, because if you were thinking about it from his shoes, who was going to care?
Yeah. And some could say, "Oh, he's wrong. America didn't do half the stuff we said we would do."
Mm.
Biden was slowly trickling in material and aid to Ukraine. And it was basically just enough to keep a stalemate going. It wasn't true, honest, let's pile it in and show Russia how strong we are kind of effort. It's just,
Yeah, if
here's
we
a
would have.
couple tanks.
Well, that's why Trump said it would have never started under him, because I think Putin understood the fact that Trump will use strength if needed.
Well, here's another thing. What if Ukraine was armed to the teeth and looked like a porcupine during that time period?
Not too.
Like after Crimea got taken over and when the invasion started, if Ukraine got armed like crazy and the military like tripled in size, and all of a sudden, instead of Russia looking at a military half its size, it's staring at a armed trained force double its size. I don't think the war would have started.
Why not?
Because Ukraine would have been strong enough to inflict significant damage without doubt on Russia, where Russia believed, and most military analysts, that I think the war would take a matter of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the strength in Ukraine? Where's the perception of strength? There was none.
That's true.
So the war started. There's no perception of strength in the West either.
Do you want to give us some historical background to this?
Peace through strength.
Yeah, different places that it would have, or that it worked in
there's a
the
couple
history.
Large time periods that are defined, like the Pax Romana, which is a time period where Rome essentially took over the majority of their adversaries. They obviously had adversaries on their borders, but because they were so economically strong and so militarily strong, it was just a time period of peace for the empire where not a lot of significant conflicts happened because they were the big bad guy. You didn't really mess with them. I mean, you have to demonstrate your strength a little bit. And there are a couple flare-ups along the Roman borders, but they were little things. They weren't like big full-out wars.
Yeah.
And you could say the British Empire, their Pax Britannica, which was the same scenario, except Great Britain wasn't so overwhelmingly powerful, no one wanted to dare touch them. I mean, France was fairly strong through this time period. So was Germany developing into the full Germany. Russia was pretty decent. Just everyone was so powerful, no one wanted to touch each other. So you had this time of roughly 100 years of peace in Europe without any major conflicts kicking off. Essentially a time period from Napoleon to like World War One-ish. There were a couple little things in there, but
mm-hmm.
there was a couple threats to be major conflicts too, but they didn't really manifest that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was just a balance between everyone being so strong that they didn't really want to mess with each other. It's almost like a Cold War scenario. Then there's a time period called the Pax Americana, which is essentially when America got so powerful, we had peace in the world because no one really wanted to mess with anyone. Essentially, no one dared mess with the US and no one dared mess with the Soviet Union during that time period.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically from end of World War One to now.
Yeah, which of our presidents was the one that really kind of started this thought? Because obviously it was kind of a thought through different times in history, but was it a specific president or was it a time period that more called for this?
The biggest president that pushed this in, of course, our founders also looked at the threat of Great Britain and instituted some military defenses. Like, we built a bunch of little special defense boats, which didn't work during the War of 1812, but to deter the British. It's kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah.
It didn't work, but
they tried.
Yeah. But the main president that pushed this in and actually made it work was Teddy Roosevelt. He always said, speak softly and carry a big stick. Well, the point of that was to big, giant, powerful military to flex, and so other people don't want to mess with you, and be nice and kind to them.
I said it sounded like something Trump would say too.
Well, he also did kind of a military parade thing where he built this giant Great White Fleet, it's called, and sailed it around the world, a whole bunch of countries, and they go, oh wow, look at this big, powerful American Navy. Don't mess with them. Yeah, he just toured this fleet across the world and put it in ports of capitals and major countries, and they're just like, look at this American power.
Like, look how awesome we are. Don't mess with us.
Yep.
That sounds very American, not gonna lie. We love a good parade.
Or Russia does military, most authoritarian powers do military parades constantly.
Well, I mean,
so that's kind of the same conflict.
I mean, that's why a lot of people were scared of Russia, because they had all these cool looking things in their parade. Turns out it was their only one of that one, but
oh, recently added G14 Armada, which they only have like a couple of, and yeah, they put that through the parade.
I mean, it makes sense.
They terrified us right after World War II with this IS-3 tank. It looked like this super, like, something that was like twice as powerful as anything Germany had that we struggled to face. And we were like, oh no, they got a whole pile of these. What do we do? So it scared us when we saw those. Turns out they weren't nearly as good as they looked, but we didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do we think it's such a good policy? I've always thought it was a good policy because often it leads to peace. And everyone's like, oh, but they're warmongering, like you said. But if you think about it in the context of playground, you have a couple bullies and a couple, people that are getting bullied. The one time you really stand up to them and show your strength, often they go find someone weaker. Because the bully doesn't want to pick on someone who's strong. They want to pick on someone who's weak. And I hate to call people bullies of the world, but that is how countries work.
Yeah.
Like how Ben Shapiro calls it, where there's a bunch of bullies in the sandbox in the schoolyard kind of thing. You got to be the strongest one there, and everyone leaves you alone.
Yep.
And I thought it was just such a simple way of explaining it, because we've all been through that, and it's sadly no different in the world in terms of countries, and it really promotes that stability that you need, because there needs to be a power that's powerful in charge that wants good, which is America. We promote freedom, unlike a lot of other nations that kind of just want to take over land, which, a little bit of Russia, definitely in the Middle East, certain places over there.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in the Middle East, why is this basically the only method that works?
Well, because the Arabs, especially, culture, other than others, theirs especially, is viewed through strength. They respect strength more than any other culture. So if you want to go buy stuff in the Middle East, like you go to a grocery store, well, more like a market, don't quite have the grocery stores, and you want to buy products, well, they barter. So you got to walk up to the guy at the market and have basically a fight just to get the price down.
That's so weird.
And that's just how their culture is. You get into arguments over the prices of everything just so you can lower the price and buy it, and everything's marked up like crazy. So if you just treat it like an American store where you walk in, you look at the price and you buy it, well, then that's you getting gypped by them because they've over exasperated it just so they can have a stand to fight against you, to lower it to an area that they'd still be good for them.
Yeah, that is such a cultural difference, because you go anywhere in Europe, and it's very similar to here. It's very westernized. The price is what it is, and There's no haggling system. There's no bartering. Honestly, in the West, most people would consider that kind of rude.
Yeah,
I mean, other than like a little bit of here and there at like, I don't know, say a garage sale or car lot. But in the West, it's definitely considered more rude to do that, where in these areas, it's the normal.
well, if I were to go there and look at the prices and not know about this, I just wouldn't buy anything because I'd be like, oh my goodness.
Right?
I would be utterly clueless that you have to argue with the store owner.
We wouldn't even know how to argue with the
No,
store.
we would have no idea how to do it. But yeah, that their culture is so ingrained through this strength, and they look at their neighbors in the Middle East and they all try to put on this show of who's stronger. And it's been constant. And there's been a couple of countries that wouldn't really engage in this and things wouldn't work out the best for them. And times when two countries lose that, or the leader is so insanely crazy that the perception of strength went away. There was a time when Jordan was thought to be really weak and Syria tried to attack them. Well, another country flexed a muscle and stopped that. Israel flew fighter jets over the tanks that were rolling into Jordan, and Syria was like, okay, we're done.
Just kidding.
Pull back. Because at that time, Israel was considered a superpower in the Middle East, and Syria was like, we're not messing with you because we're not going to mess with Jordan.
I'm kind of surprised that they're not more scared of us, even though I know Biden's policies obviously were very weak because he tried to basically do this talk negotiation, like what you kind of do with, I don't want to say Britain, that we're friends with.
Oh, yeah.
But why didn't they take him a little bit more seriously? Because regardless, America is still quite strong. Or did they just not believe him that he wouldn't do anything about it?
Well, you can have a weapon or a gun, and then if the enemy or negotiator believes that you are too mentally weak to use it or to wield it, then what threat does that have?
That's true.
And that's kind of how the world went under Biden. There was just, yes, America is a superpower of the world. Our military, I think, is extremely capable. And honestly, I don't think we quite understand how massively capable this military is.
Yeah.
But no one thought it would be used. So what threat is it? What's wrong if we go attack another country? What's America going to do about it?
Yes, that's true.
I mean, there's a little bit of that during World War II. America went hyper-isolationist. We had the nickname of the sleeping giant because people knew we had immense potential. And the immense potential we had during World War II is absolutely astounding and shocking what we did.
I love that image of the sleeping giant. Basically, you can poke the giant a little bit, but once you kind of piss him off, he's going to squash you.
Well, we fought two major wars against two capable powers. We supplied the British, we supplied the French, and we supplied the Russians. I do not believe the Russians would have achieved anywhere near what they did without US aid. I don't know if the Russians would have lost the war or not, but the stalemate would have definitely persisted. And I don't know about Moscow. Moscow was like really built up fort, but Germany would have at least made it to them, like actually to it, not just seeing it through binoculars.
They were saying something about Egypt.
Oh, in the Middle East, Egypt has been like pretty much through their entire history of the 1940s, 50s, when they kind of got fully released from the British. they basically ran a policy of give me as many tanks and guns as you possibly can. They'd go to the Russians, they'd go to the British, they'd go to whoever they would. And they built up a military that is just giant for the Middle East. Like right now, I think they have one of the largest Abrams stockpiles in
Yeah.
American tanks.
I was kind of surprised by that.
And Egypt has not been messed with in the Middle East. I mean, I guess you can argue the 67 war, and I guess the war of 56, I believe it was. That was the only time it kind of got messed with. But I mean, France and Great Britain were kind of involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you had two what were thought of superpowers or world-class powers getting involved. But yeah, no one really messed with Egypt because Egypt was more powerful, bigger, stronger. They had the perception of greatest strength in the Middle East. Currently, they have the largest population of any single country in the Middle East.
Didn't
So, I
realize
mean,
that.
who's going to mess with them?
It's true.
I mean, Iran and Iraq fought each other.
All the time.
Somehow Saudi Arabia kind of didn't get messed with. But America kind of said at a certain point in their history, hey, you give us oil, we'll protect you. So then who's going to mess with Saudi Arabia?
It's true. Are there any good examples of when weakness leads to this chaos?
Well,
Why the opposite doesn't work? Why can't we just talk it out?
well, I mean, World War II is a pretty good example of that. World War I is an example of the opposite. They should have talked it out. But World War II, what did talking it out do?
Nothing.
I mean, if the Czechoslovakia, yeah, it was Czechoslovakia at that time, republic after World War II, if they would have actually dug their teeth in, because that country looked like a porcupine. They had forts all along its border with Germany. It had a pretty sizable military fort size, and it could have held its own against the Germans in the terrain it had easily. The blitzkrieg tactics that Germany is famous for would not have worked in the mountains that they were supposed to attack the Czechoslovakia. If that country would have dug its teeth in and defended itself, Germany would have lost. There were plans in the German military to get rid of, Hitler once the war started because they knew it wouldn't work. And what did they do? They folded. And everyone backed down, and they were talking with Hitler and they're negotiating. He just went after Poland next and got some land off of one of the Baltic states, took a port, Mamus, I think it's called. And people just weren't flexing their muscles. They weren't pushing on Germany and saying, hey, here's the line, you don't go past it. And he just kept getting more and more and more and gaining experience from each conflict. And by the time he took Poland, Germany was the most combat experienced country in Europe, which is why France fell. And if France had a ton of combat experience, they wouldn't have made anywhere near the mistakes they were making.
It's true. I mean,
they made a ton of mistakes because nothing was tested.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's an example of trying to negotiate and not flex your muscle. France never flexed any muscles against Germany. Germany took over the Rhineland, and France was, by treaty, supposed to protect it. And they could have flexed muscle then. They had a military. Germany had virtually nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they folded. Where's the strength?
How come America didn't flex their strength sooner? As they saw all these countries slowly falling.
Well, we had a culture at the time period of that's Europe's problem, which I guess if you go back 30, 40 years, it kind of was Europe's problem. I mean, you have, for example, the Revolutionary War. I think it took 6 months to get a ship across the ocean.
That's a while.
That takes a long time. Nothing could really mess with us without us preparing for it and being aware and, acting upon it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we didn't care. That was their issue. That was their problem. Well, by the time World War II came around, it didn't take long to sail a fleet across the ocean.
Well, now you can just fly
Well, yeah, so I mean,
fast.
technology basically shrank the world. And there was a hypothetical environment where Germany could have took over Europe, potentially, and threatened the United States. I mean, they had experimental bombers that could fly from Germany and bomb America. And they were working on semi-ballistic missiles. I mean, by the time you got into the 50s, we could hurt each other. So, I mean, that's why America has kind of shifted. But I mean, at the time, we just thought Germany and Europe was so far away that this didn't matter. And I guess we were proved wrong at Pearl Harbor. I mean,
Yeah, I feel like America, even now, still kind of has that cultural thought of, okay, we really only need to worry about Canada and Mexico, and what are they going to do?
well, we have two oceans in between, which was the argument. That makes sense.
Which is fair, but
it doesn't take long for a missile or an airplane to get here from anywhere.
No, and everyone's like, oh, we should be more, was it isolationists?
Yeah, we should worry about ourselves. And
I get their points, but the problem is America is one of the strongest powers right now, especially because Britain and France have been a bit on the weak side, especially even in their own country. And it's,
oh yeah,
I'm sure we'll talk about how we think they've fallen in a different video, but
yeah, Europe's.
We're basically it when it comes to the world power of the Western mindset, and I think people forget that's a good thing.
Well,
Peace and prosperity come from Western thought.
Well, right now, when Trump's renegotiating the trade deals, the military protection leverage is all on our side of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Europe hardly has anything. I mean, where J.D. Vance was complaining about Trump attacking the Houthis because, I think he said a whole bunch of European trade goes through there and, almost no American trade.
Yeah, why would we care?
Well, Europe at this time doesn't even have the capability to attack the Houthis.
It's just kind of sad.
That's just how far they've degraded from even the Cold War.
That's so sad.
Now, Trump has made a good argument. This is true. Europe does need to ramp up arms production and ammunition production.
I agree.
But they are a bloc of about 400 million. They are terrified of Russia, which is about 100 million. They're asking the 300 million Americans to protect them from Russia. And as history proved, Russia was stopped by 40 million in Ukraine. So
40 million?
Ukraine's about 40 million or 30 million.
Okay, what does Russia have?
100 million roughly. These aren't exact numbers.
I was trying to math in my head.
So, I mean, Europe isn't really at threat of being taken over.
No, but you take it piece by piece.
But peace through strength, they don't have the strength threat either.
No.
So Europe's kind of in a position they may not have peace. I mean, they've been issuing warnings. The government is handing out letters to all of their people, each country taking its turn, on preparing. Citizens need to prepare a 72-hour stockpile of water and goods in case war breaks out.
Yeah, and I'm like, why are you, as a country, not doing the same thing?
What, telling your people to prepare?
Why not get your military prepared?
Oh, I mean, they're working on it now.
Well, that's good. Well, yeah, because I think this is one of the reasons everyone was talking about World War III is because the kind of the table was set for it. You have a bunch of weak European countries, you have a bunch of
Yeah.
other areas that were, very, very fired up and ready to figure out where to attack next. And I feel like if we would have had one more American president that was weak
Lame
or
duck.
thought of as weak, there could have been.
Well,
Really, they're all blaming Trump for starting World War III. Well, I don't see it happening yet because he has taken this peace through strength stance. It's one of the only stances you can take, especially right now.
I mean, right now we live in a time where there's the perception of America being weaker than we once were. China and Russia prior to the Ukraine war.
I think everyone's weaker right now.
Maybe, yeah, Europe West is. Or a perception of weaker at least.
Yeah.
But China and Russia have the perception of being stronger. Iran believed they were really strong. They tried to ballistic missile Israel and basically bully anyone in the Middle East.
Yeah, they like to do that.
I mean, at one point they fired a missile at Saudi Arabia and hit an oil refinery. No, drone. It was a drone.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny how Iran also tries to hide behind all of their proxies. Which, I mean, I get. They get to have all the fun and not get any of the blame because they don't really want war against them.
Yeah, they want to win wars without fighting the wars. So you can almost say hire out minions to do their biddings for them.
Yeah. That's basically what it is.
So there's a time period that we grew up in that was kind of the definition or high point of America's peace through strength, the 90s. There was a country threatening to copy Hitler, essentially, invaded its neighbor, prepared and threatened to invade its next neighbor and its next neighbor, and that was the Gulf War. Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait, took it over, threatened to take over Saudi Arabia, wanted to go to war with them next. America came in and said, out of Kuwait, we didn't do a major war and invade Saddam Hussein in Iraq and kick him out of power. No, we just came in, blew his military up and military infrastructure and knocked him out of the country he took over and said, hey, these are your borders, you stay on that side. And 1990s was a brilliant time of peace through strength. And Bush also went into Panama and, flexed muscle there too. So I mean,
what Trump's doing now too, basically.
We had this time period of, flexing muscle and a little bit of fighting. Well, thankfully, Iraq turned into a little bit of fighting compared to news media thought it would have been way worse. But I mean, if you look at just the numbers, Iraq was. And
you're talking about Bush number.
Bush Senior, first Bush.
First Bush, okay. Just for people out there that are younger people.
The VP
who only remember Bush too.
Yeah, VP of Ronald Reagan. That Bush. 1990s demonstration of strength. We had basically a period of peace through that time. I mean, the Clinton administration didn't have much going on. I mean, the only threat that happened that we didn't really, we kind of went weak on this part. Bush and Reagan fought a terror war pretty strong that people don't really know about. And then when Clinton came into office, he basically did nothing in this terror war. And 9/11 happened. Because we did nothing again.
Yeah.
But the country's perception of us was we were strong. And I would argue we were probably the strongest compared to everyone else in basically that time, the 2000s, late 90s and 2000s.
We were a good time.
Probably at our peak military power compared to any rival out there. We had all of our Cold War stockpiles ready to face off against the Russians during the 80s. And there was just no one available to face us. And what did we do as the world superpower? Nothing. We didn't take over countries. I think if you want a country to be the global power, it needs to be the West. because you don't want China to do it. They've already gobbled up neighbors around them. I mean, where's Tibet today?
Right.
They're talking about taking over Taiwan.
Yeah, good luck with that.
At this point, the Taiwanese, I almost wouldn't say are the same culture as China. And we could say the same for North and South Korea at this point, too.
Yeah. I guess that's why I was a little bit confused on people's reaction to Israel when the whole October 7th
7th
thing happened, that they were condemning Israel for defending themselves. Can you even imagine if that happened in America or any other Western country? We'd have squashed whoever did that to us. It wouldn't have mattered who they were.
Well, I find that,
and I'm confused of why they thought Israel was weak, but I guess it was one of those we found a weak moment, because Israel, in comparison to the neighbors, is definitely not weak, and especially with their Iron Dome.
Well, I can kind of explain why they thought that. There was a lot of news rhetoric at the time because politically there was this, they wanted to alter. So the judges in Israel are not like the judges in America. Israel does not have a constitution like America. So the judicial system kind of divvies into legislation and interpreting laws beyond what they should do, what I think they should be doing. And a bunch of Israelis agreed with that.
Mm-hmm.
So they were pushing legislation through to change the judicial system in Israel to be more American. Well, during that process, the two sides did not agree, and they were protesting in the streets and, like, you could say, pointing daggers and knives at each other. And the news media was essentially threatening, oh no, Israel's going to go into a civil war. And the Arabs were like, oh, Israel's enemies anyway, not just the Arabs. Arabs that aren't trying to kill Israel. The enemies of Israel were like, oh, they're divided? They can't even see eye to eye on what to do within their own country. How are they going to come together to stop us?
That's true. They were having a bunch of governmental...
It was a perception of weakness.
Okay.
Now, was Israel weak? No, because right now by all estimates, Israel should have not have essentially destroyed Hezbollah like they did. I mean, people have asked computer models to see what's the chance of Israel defeating essentially Hezbollah in like 2 weeks, and they gave it like a 0.1% chance. I mean, Hezbollah honestly had one of the largest missile stockpiles in the world.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It had more conventional missiles than almost all European countries.
Why are we letting them have that much?
Yeah, there's another argument of why Israel doesn't have that much. Yeah, being weak, I guess. But I mean, that was a threat.
Mm-hmm.
That was a terrifying threat, and it was amazing just how powerful Israel showed themselves to be. Because now they're so powerful that in Syria, this fake strength of the Assad regime that collapsed like instantly because rebels just flexed a muscle and his people ran away with their tails between their legs. Yeah, 800 soldiers attacked the capital, and there were several thousand guards, and they ran away.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, no strength there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Al-Javani, the rebel leader, I don't know, maybe leader of Syria, I'm not sure if it's quite all like figured out what's all going on there. They're kind of still in chaos.
Yeah.
He went after the rulers of the last regime, and they ran to Israel begging them to protect them. So that just is the perception now that Israel is the great strength in the Middle East and is the peacemaker. Why would your enemy from the last regime beg you to help them if they didn't believe you had the power, the capability, and the, I guess, moral fortitude to try to help them?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Israel's decision in this matter was. I mean,
Yeah.
a group of people that threaten to exterminate you gets overthrown by another group of people that threaten to exterminate you. Are you going to help the people that threaten to exterminate you?
I guess depends on what they're offering. I don't know.
I don't know. It's up to Israel.
Yeah, that's up to them. I don't know.
I don't think America would help them.
I don't think so. They're like, deal with your own little problems.
At least half our country does not have that much grace for those that want to destroy us.
Not really.
I think one thing is confusing the world. We are kind of two countries right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the Democrats and the Republicans don't see eye to eye on so many issues that when one regime comes in, the world treats it totally different, and then another regime comes in.
Uh-huh.
And Trump is this regime that I almost think the world's not ready for. I mean, he's coming in, he's flexing muscle. We haven't done that since Bush Sr., really.
Too much.
Yeah.
A little bit here and there, but
little Bush, kind of. Really Bush Sr. and Reagan. And yeah, the world's just shocked. And he's walking over to countries and going, hey, why can we buy your milk, but you can't buy our milk because you have a tariff like 500% on it? This is not free trade. Let's tariff your milk then, so we both have the same footing.
Mm-hmm.
And then just this, I guess, perception of bullying is really just a way to get things fair and equal.
Yeah.
At least that's how I see it, and I hope it turns out. Because we don't know fully.
I mean, I think with some places it's going to work out, and some places are going to be too stubborn, and they're going to ruin their relations with the U.S., which will be unfortunate. But at the same time, we've let the rest of the world bully us into basically paying for everything.
Well, look, we basically looked at. Well, I don't know this. This is how it turned out, not how it was planned. I don't know what went on really.
Yeah.
But at one point, we were the mega superpower of the world. And Europe looked at Russia and saw it crumbled into nothing. And they went, okay, we don't need to pay for our military. America, you're protecting us, right? You're in NATO. We're under your nuclear umbrella. And we were basically like, sure. So they transferred all of their military spending into social welfare programs and tariffing us, and basically we would spend our money protecting them instead of protecting ourselves. And
so dumb.
And it's just like, now Europe's like, uh-oh. And America's like, yeah, you guys did this to yourself. We spent our money protecting you. We're kind of done with this. Yeah, if big things happen, will NATO help you? But you also got to be able to help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, frankly, right now, what if World War II?
Three.
No, I'm pretending two.
Okay.
World War II kicked off again.
If the same scenario happened again?
Yeah. Europe is way less prepared. And America has to send half our Navy against, a Japan-type Pacific threat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take us months to get our army to Europe. Europe has to fill the gap. Europe has to stand their own ground. They have to stop the threat. What if the Pacific side threat is so big we ended up doing let's say a Japan first method, and Europe stands mostly alone? Well, right now, they can't really. They probably draw a line in the sand and halt advancements, but
do the best they can.
Yeah. And we find that just unfair. That what if Middle East kicks off and then something in Asia kicks off? Well, I'm sorry, Europe. We're too busy.
But
I just think, yeah, I think countries need to wake up that it's time for them to rearm, time for them to kind of get the balls to be strength again.
Yeah, I think there's been such this perception of that arming up and having arms, say, in your stockpile is a sign of warmongering, a sign of basically unetiquette kind of like
an ungentlemanly behavior.
yeah, when really it's a way to basically keep your muscles flexed to
Yeah.
the rest of the country saying, there's no way we're going to let you try and do anything to us.
Well, it's like a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard debates between bodybuilders and UFC fighters. Bodybuilders make horrible UFC fighters because they train for bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
But you just take a bodybuilder, walk him down the dark alleyway or street, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Who's going to mess with him?
No way.
No one.
That
That's
looks
what countries
scary.
need to do. They need to bodybuild.
Yeah.
Now, could this bodybuilder be effective in a fight?
Probably.
Probably. Now, he's not going to be the same as the experienced fighter.
Oh, well, yes.
Some countries happen to have experience. But he's there, he's ready, and he's capable.
Well, I don't think it would take that country too much longer
No.
to get that experience.
It probably wouldn't be hard for the bodybuilder to figure out how to fight.
Because they have the muscle, they have the fortitude.
They have the muscle, they have the training, they have the attitude, they have the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's what Europe needs to do. They need to bodybuild right now.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to do a little bit more too, because I feel like the military had been so cut.
We slipped. Oh, yeah, our military is nothing like we were in the 90s. Not even close. There was a famous debate where Barack Obama debating against Republican from Utah. I'm forgetting his name. 2012-ish. Looking it up.
Anywho.
Anyway, in this debate, he was saying the Republican from Utah, Romney? Mitt Romney.
I'm right.
Yeah, I think it's Mitt Romney. Are you looking up? Okay, what does it say?
I don't know. We'll find out if they even know what I'm talking about.
Did it say Mitt Romney? Romney, yeah, Mitt Romney. Yeah. Okay, Mitt Romney was saying we need to build more airplanes, we need to build more weaponry. And Obama looked at him and said, no. What do you have, a foreign policy of the 1980s? We only need a couple specialized weapons. No, that's not true. That was wrong. We need a big, robust military.
Whether we use it or not.
Yeah, I mean, okay, what if you have a couple specialized weapons? Well, what if the enemy learns to destroy the couple specialized weapons? And you don't have them. What do you have? Well, a good example is Great Britain right now. They have the Challenger 2 and working on the Challenger 3. Great tank. Awesome. They built hundreds of them and they shut down the factories. What happens if those tanks get destroyed?
They don't have any more.
They can't make any more. Great Britain only has a couple of tanks. That's it. Now they're on an island, thankfully. But they don't have no muscle.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm hoping the world wakes up to remember that strength is a good thing and not a weakness. Because when you don't have that strength, you are weak.
You get pushed over by evil, bad people, which is another thing. There are evil, bad people out there.
I think the West definitely forgot about that. Because we look around us and it's all very, oh, everything's so nice and wonderful.
Mm.
And they forget that not too far away, especially in the world now, things aren't as far away. That there is people that really just want destruction for the world.
Well, the world's a lot closer than it used to be.
Right. Yeah. So this is why we really like this policy and have always stood for this policy. But let us know what you think. If you think it's a good policy, what they could do better, or do you disagree?
Yep. Comment below.
See you next time.